to transition on to our actual topic of the day. I'm going to be discussing some things that we think should absolutely be implemented into Sea of Thieves here in the near future. And then I'll get y'all's thoughts and opinions on it and stuff.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna challenge whatever your idea is because I spent an hour or two last night writing down a couple more ideas.
Oh, good. I want creativity.
You know, here's an idea for Sea of Thieves: move the Briggsy voyage to the voyage table, and have it be something you can just access through the menus rather than like a physical thing to vote on.
Whoa!
So it's not constantly in the way.
That's crazy.
If I had to choose something that I think would be cool, was something like, you know, I know how like this game is all about just cosmetics and skill to play, but at the same time, I think it would be kind of cool if they did some stuff like Destiny, where if like you can grind for forever and then get like some upgrades for like PvE stuff, but not the stuff that doesn't help you in PvP.
Okay.
But I don't see how they would implement that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
So here's my one major issue with that, is that even PvE only upgrades would still help you in PvP by the sheer nature of you being able to speed through world events faster before people can get to you.
Okay. That's
so
valid.
even that is kind of like a steep slope they'd have to be careful to not go too far down if they were to implement something.
What if it's like just quests only?
Maybe, but
I'd say like at that point, I wouldn't even say don't even bother implementing it, because I think the quest stuff right now is pretty good how it is, where you get the slight amount of rep. I think honestly the quests right now are fine, at least in my opinion.
It's not necessarily a horrible idea. It's a cool idea. It just doesn't necessarily work out in perfect practice for this game with the way it's balanced. It's a good idea on paper. It's a good idea on paper. I like what you're thinking.
I like what you're stepping in. I just don't like the smell of it.
To where it doesn't. Yeah, there's no way to implement it without it affecting PvP in some out of indirect way.
Yeah, the one that I think Rare should implement is pirate hideouts. And
hideouts? Okay. How would these work?
What I've envisioned
floated around
with pirate hideouts is, for starters, it should be instance based, kind of like we have the portals for the various Sea of the Damned quests. So there's you have your portal that you go into your pirate hideout, and you have your gold, and you can purchase, additions, wings, floors, that kind of stuff. You're building your, what's it called? A Thieves Haven-esque hideout hall, basically. But I don't like just cosmetic-based hideouts. I think they're absolutely useless. So my thoughts are, this is where you start implementing PvP. So you have your pirate hideout. You're spending your hard-earned gold on your hideout because you've purchased all the cosmetics that you want, so you're just racking in the millions. You can hire, based on your faction, skellies or ghosts to defend your fort. You also have your loot. How it works in my mind is that, let's use Athena, for instance. You turn in enough, chests of legends to Athena, and it's, comm-based. So let's say you turn in 50 chests of legends, and now you get to decorate your pirate hideout with chest of legends, with Athena loot. To you, it's just decor. It's cosmetic. Makes it look Athena-themed. To a player that wants to attack it, that's actual loot. And so now you have
loot that they can take and sell.
Yep. So they have to, first off, depending on how many of what faction you've hired to defend your fort, they have to defeat the various ships that are patrolling your hideout. kind of like the Ghost Fleet or the Skelly Fleet. They defeat that, it's on to the second wave. Now they get to storm the castle, as it were, taking on the NPCs that are defending your fort. And then after however many waves or whatever, they have access to your vault, where you have all your goodies. If you are online, you'll get a notification that your hideout is under attack, and you could join in to help defend it. I'm kind of it's not fully thought out, but the theory is that there could be a time limit, and as a person storms the castle, depending on how quickly they can storm the castle, depends on how good of a haul they can take out. So, as time, let's say 5 minutes, they have 5 minutes to go in to storm the castle, and they get a max haul. If it takes any longer, it starts dwindling down. They get to walk away with something regardless, but the quicker they can get in there, the better of a haul they'll get. And so, as you progress, you build up your pirate hideout. It can become more and more complicated and harder to storm. Not to the point where it's an impossibility, but let's say it could be, more waves or more NPCs per wave that you have to take out. And so you kind of have this, maybe this ranking system based on how much you've built up your pirate hideout. But yeah, that's kind of my idea. Something to, spend your gold on while also grinding for when you've pretty much maxed out your reputation elsewhere. And so then after your pirate hideout gets ransacked, you can pay your gold to build it back up and do reps and whatever else. And there could be cooldowns once your base is attacked. It can't just be ransacked, immediately thereafter. You have a cooldown for maybe a few days or a week before it's eligible to be attacked again. So yeah, that's like my ongoing idea.
Okay.
I really like this idea, actually, and it's not the first time I've heard very similar ideas to this. I used to discuss ideas like this a couple years back with people online, and I feel like this would fit even better in the game now than it would have back then, now that we have a guild system. Yeah. Because it could be kind of like a guild hall that you would have like in an MMO or something.
That's what I would say. It'd have to be a guild theme sort of
personal hideout.
I really like the idea of the fort being defended by a faction of the Phantoms or the Skellies. I think that's pretty sick. And you have to defeat those to quote unquote storm the castle or the hideout or whatever. I actually really like that a lot. My goal for this is not just to implement ideas, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to post little clips and snippets of it on social media, and I'll tag the devs and Rare and see if these this is a billboard for ideas that we want to see. This is direct player feedback.
Yeah.
And a very round table, just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to implement all this, and they could go oh, that's kind of stupid, which of course that's their devs, that's their job, is, implement stuff for the game. So at the end of the day, we want to give them good ideas that are a bit off kilter.
Put the ideas out there.
Yeah, but that's the goal. Is we want these to be so not necessarily completely out of left field to where they're I don't think so, but a little bit grounded to where okay, can we do this? That's my goal at least.
If I might add that way, Dragon, you can add on to this as well. I thought about with your hideout, either personal hideout, not the guild, but personal hideout. You can stash supplies. Now, hear me out on this one. It sounds OP. You can just go and just, stock up sups at your hideout. So when you spawn in, you can spawn from your hideout and sup up there. However, here's the trade-off. You have to stock your outpost with supplies. So if you want to log off for the day, you can go to your outpost and store everything. But once you pull things out, you're pulling supplies out. It's like a bank withdrawal. So if you sink and you lost supplies, you can't just go back and have all your supplies back at your outpost. If you bleed it dry, sucks to suck. You got to go and refill it. Yep. So it's kind of like a spawn in and spawn out type of location.
I would say that's not a terrible idea. I think it would be, they would have to be very, like, I would say it'd have to be a maximum sort of thing, too. Like, you can only have this much. That way it isn't like you have a distinct over advantage against other players, at least in my opinion. And I don't think this would be something that would be overly difficult to code either, because you have a similar system with, in Black Ops 2 Zombies on the map Buried, where you have a bank of your points there, and you can, like, say you're going for high rounds and you just want to bank your gold or whatever, you can actually go to a spot on the map and you can bank your points, and you can completely bleed yourself dry on that for, you know, feature games and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like once you bleed it dry, it's empty. So I think it's a cool idea, but it would have to have a maximum sort of thing, and there would have to be limitations. For example, like no curse balls, I think would be very, very specific. You cannot store curse balls there, as that would be massively overpowered.
It would be uber captaincy, essentially.
Yeah, I think it would have to be limited to fruit, wood, and cannons exclusively. And I think cooked meat as well would be something that they would have to say no to as well, just given how powerful and potent some of those foods can be.
Unless, and you could probably up the leeway if part of the like the player attacking your fort is that they get a share of the supplies that you've stocked up. So, for the sake of the argument, let's say you've stocked up 1,000 cannonballs. They can't loot all 1,000, even if they maxed out the time or did the fastest time to take your fort. But they get let's say, so what, 1,000 cannonballs, they walk away with, 200
or 200,
yeah, something like that. So even if you could allow cooked meat, the more you allow into your fort, the more you have at stake. That's something that the players can steal.
So,
but I agree, limitations, because it could give you an unfair advantage.
I think at least to me, just off of hearing all the biggest, I would say, challenge to that would be, number one, coding and server issues. Given, I mean, how many thousands of guilds do we have active right now? So that would be a guild per, or one of those hideouts per one of those guilds. And number two, depending on the size of your guild may not be full. So, and people have work and stuff too. So at that point, like your thing's getting raided and you have absolutely no chance to defend it. I think that would be the two main critiques there, at least to me. Just like offhand there.
Like a potential option. The idea of getting like you want to swing on a rope while on a galleon or something.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's still an idea.
That's definitely still a cool idea. I actually would like that, where if you were in a galley v galley fight, you can actually, like, for example, like, use the harpoon gun and use it to swing over instead of just, like, it launches you over. Just to make it a little bit more, like,
a pistol cinematic. They're swinging and just blah.
Yeah, and you can use your pistol or a throwing knife, and you can use it while you're swinging. I think that would be super, super cool.
Yeah, I was about to say, can you use weapons while you're in the swing animation? So
it would have to be certain weapons, like you'd only be able to use the pistol or the blow dart or the throwing knife.
Well, imagine being a streamer, right? And like you're swinging across and you pull out your flintlock and you actually manage to land a shot and get a kill on somebody before you've even landed on the deck.
Yeah,
like how crazy, how wild viewers are gonna go when you pull
and what if
like that.
What if, like, there's a mechanic that's exclusive to swinging with the rope, is that you can when you barrel into somebody, you can actually knock them back,
knock them over.
Yeah.
You just
or, like if you have the cutlass while you're swinging, you can cut the other player's rope.
So you kick them off the side of the ship.
Yeah, like you can knock them off the fixed point, like a.
Then that's like this is a kind of a minor one that I've been wanting for a while. I would love some sort of this could be implemented in a number of ways. So I think an issue with boarding and stuff when you're you're in naval battle, you send over a board, and that other crew repairs, and you have planks that are active there. I would love to be able to use my shovel or have a hatchet to break those planks.
Rip them off.
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be cool.
I think that's something
small. This is a
small.
long time requested idea. The idea of a boarding hatchet that would have that functionality.
I think that would be a really like small thing that you could easily
the enemy boat with, and like, climb up the side of their hull, or
that
potentially used to like pry off boards that have already repaired hulls. This is an idea I've seen discussed a lot over the years.
I think that's something small. I think that would be pretty easily to implement. And it's like its sole purpose is like, hey, I can pry this off.
Like you make the same size of hole or smaller as a
it would be like at most a tier 2, like at most a tier 2.
But it'd be something it'd be more of it's not like you're gonna put a tier 5 hole. It's gonna be just an inconvenience. You hear this hacking away, and you're like, what the?
Yeah, but that's the trade-off is you can hear that.
Yeah.
So here's my thought: is I prefer the tools not rules approach. I like keeping the rules on tools as limited as possible. So if you were gonna have that, I say allow to go up to like the max tier hole with it, but make it difficult. Like you're probably gonna have to cycle out the enemy crew a few times and have to prove you're like substantially better than them in close quarters combat.
And each tier hole gets longer and longer.
Like you have to hack away several times. Exactly. Yeah. So give the player the option, but make it difficult. And if somebody's doing that, it's not spawn camping. They're clearly trying to actively sink them because they're making a hole.
Yeah.
And if you have this boarding hatchet, since I imagine normal weapon slots, you're not going to be a double gunning sweat while doing this. So it's not like you're using the most broken meta, which is like, I don't know, blunder sniper, pistol sniper, or what have you, where you're able to just 2-tap somebody and then go back to your business.
I think it should also do like a set number of damage.
If you mainly use your guns in PvP. Yeah, like all weapons, of course.
I think I would say it'd have to be like either equal to or similar to the sword, like 20 or 25 damage per hit.
I've seen a lot of people suggest it would be like slow a sword, but would do more damage per hit. So, it's kind of like a hefty axe type thing, maybe.
I would say that kind of depends on which route you go on it, because if you make it a hatchet, then that's going to be a bit more of a speedy...
Yeah, it could be lighter. I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and you could... actually, if it's a hatchet, I say you have to dual wield them. You could have unique combat animations with that.
Berserker combat pirate just going in.
At this point, we just...
And your pirate lets out a battle cry in the same instance there. You
have a barbarian.
Yeah, you see this rabid pirate swinging on a rope and then just coming in dual hatchet.
It's like that was out of Curse of the Black Pearl. Isn't like the first instance when you actually meet the Black Pearl pirates? Is you have the one guy that has the hatchets and the grenades, and he's just like running around screaming.
Basically.
So Sea of Thieves monster idea, the Storm King. Originally, this idea is one I had developed with a friend while drinking a grog chest dry last year. We were doing my yearly tradition of draining the grog chest, and we were just sitting on Smuggler's Bay hashing ideas out with each other. We had been tossing ideas back and forth for some new sea monster idea, and that friend had the idea for a giant raven-like enemy. Though in the end we had kind of settled upon making this boss a pelican to keep more in line with the game's nautical themes. So far imagine a giant pelican type enemy. So the idea very quickly became, what if we had a giant bird that lived in a thunderstorm? And the end result looked something like this, right? Picture this. Its fight would work similar to a world event, though preferably would be separate to the normal world event rotation. A massive storm cloud different to the one that is ever present on the map would appear for a limited amount of time. This signals the arrival of the Storm King. The storm cloud extends all the way down to the water's surface. The winds begin to pick up as your ship approaches the looming umbral clouds whose thunder is heard for miles across the map. You sail through the clouds and break through to see the sun blotted out by storm clouds. Heavy rain, stormfish, and battle gills jumping out of the water in a frenzy, and the centerpiece of such a cinematic display, a massive raven black pelican taking flight. Diving into the water for fish, the Lord of the Storm is likely to assault any ship it catches hunting its prey within its territory. So hunters call beware. Be careful what you try to fish up here, because battle kills and stormfish are valuable. That'll draw its ire. Now, what would the fight actually look like with the storm? And now I remember discussing a few different ideas for mechanics for the monster, such as its storm arena appearing randomly, pretty much anywhere on the map, rather than simply over predetermined islands like most world events. So, if the storm spawned, for example, over mostly open water, the Storm King would be seen flying in the air. But if the storm appears over a large island, there's a chance that he could be perched on said island before the fight initiates. That being said, the fight is very much a naval battle, and where the Storm King is primarily for cinematic effect at the start of the encounter. Just for flavor, like you see the big bird perched up on the island, and it's a very cinematic view type thing, right? There are a good number of ideas for attacks the Storm King could use. He could have attacks that are mechanically similar to that of the Kraken and Megalodon, for the sake of being intuitive for most players to fight, such as being able to swoop down, grabbing the side of the ship, digging his talons in deep, slowly popping open holes bigger and bigger, similar to the Kraken's grab attack. Players would need to damage it to force it into releasing its hold. It could have a simple attack where it swoops down to crash into the side of the hull, nothing special about this. I also think it would be very cool if it electrified its feathers as it became more agitated, engaging the storm to occasionally rain down random lightning bolts, with the same mechanics of being more likely to hit sword users. For a more targeted direct attack rather than just some random environmental effect like that would be. Imagine he charges up in the air before firing down a large lightning bolt at the boat from his wings, possibly with a visual indication of where the lightning would hit, giving players a chance to avoid the attack. Something like static discharge building up on whatever part of the ship he's about to strike. It's a massive, legendary bird creature with the powers of the storm. Another idea is for a grab attack on players directly, signaled, I imagine, something like a distinct sound cue from the boss, like maybe it's like a distinct screeching sound, or whatever noise the boss would make to get below deck to avoid being grabbed. If grabbed, the Storm King could fly high into the air before dropping the player from the sky. If the storm arena takes place near an island, the Storm King may intelligently choose to drop the player to their deaths. Other types of attacks the Storm King may have could include aerial maneuvers to show off the Storm King's flight ability. Or perhaps it could flap its wings to push the player's ship around with gusts of wind, messing with their cannon angle. So he could push the ship around entirely, just using the storm's winds, essentially. Along with, maybe he can create bursts of thunder, like a thunderclap, that could cinematically and very briefly blur the player's vision and deafen their hearing to show off the power behind the Storm King's thunder. Another idea for this encounter would be potential area hazard as an idea bounced around. The storm arena wouldn't affect the player's wheel like the normal storm. However, the stormfish frantically leaping from the water could potentially jump over the player's boat, damaging players hit along their path. An additional little mechanic we had discussed was the idea of using fish to maybe distract the Storm King, since that's what you see him do when you come in. He's diving into the water. He's basically just a big animal hunting his prey. Catching fish and tossing them into the water to provide the Storm King target, and potentially creating openings for cannon shots was a fun idea. Another funny one I thought of could be allowing the player to keep hold of objects in their hands when being grabbed by the Storm King, to allow for freedom of gameplay. Essentially take what the Kraken does when it sucks the player up to the next level. Instead of just being able to pull out your sword and take swipes at the monster, maybe the player had a trident in their hand, Or perhaps more devilish players took the risk of bringing kegs to the fight. Imagine being lifted up into the air with a mega keg, only to engulf the Storm King in a fiery explosion as you keg and showed and allowed yourself to be grabbed. Tools, not rules, after all. Lastly, what loot would a pirate expect from such a creature? Well, at the end of the fight, I believe the Storm King would retreat as to live to fight again another day, thus justifying being able to fight him multiple times. So he wouldn't leave a corpse behind as a megalodon. Perhaps he would regurgitate swallowed loot from his massive bill for the player to retrieve, and as an additional find, would drop feathers that could be sold to the Hunter's Call as a trophy. Additional idea, selling enough Storm King's feathers would unlock a trinket for your ship so you can have an actual trophy hunts. In conclusion, the Storm King is meant to be treated as a major optional boss, not a normal world event or a thing plastered on the map like the Burning Blade. It's meant to be an environmental mystery for the player when they see that new storm for the first time, and a cinematic yet engaging experience when they explore a little too deep into the heart of the storm. The Storm King is meant to be a more prolonged fight than your average Mega Kraken, something with more health that can hit your ship seriously hard. It would not be something for new players to easily have a chance of beating, but an actual test of a crew's coordination and skill, as its flight patterns would make it a tougher target to hit.
Sounds absolutely badass. And yes, Puff, so? I agree. I want to see a drawn-out Storm King. That'd be sick. I don't even have any critiques of that. That's like a near perfect like explanation. With it has nerfs and buffs to both players and the ship alike.
I'm more curious about how Rare would incorporate it into the lore.
I kind of thought about that too, because it's like, oh, here's a new monster we've never. But you could always go the no kind of very little thought put into it route of, oh, here's another legendary like we've discovered legends the ancients once told back in their day of a new type of monster that once prowled the Sea of Thieves, and like the megalodons once did, it's now returned. You could easily explain it away as something kind of like that if you needed to.
Yeah.
Something lazy.
Do you have anything else before we go into the Spire?
Yeah, I do have another sea.
I think it was a serpent, if I remember you telling me about that.
Start harpooning stuff up.
It'd be like
yeah, a sea serpent.
Norse
my
mythology.
Own take on the sea serpent idea, because many people have. It's not based off of Norse mythology, I'll tell you that immediately. Okay, so this one's a bit shorter, and I don't know if it's necessarily as well fleshed out, despite the fact that I've had this idea. It's not necessarily simple. Mechanically, it's possibly more complex. I don't know. Well, maybe not in terms of the actual fight, but you'll see what I mean. So, Sea of Thieves monster idea. The Sea Serpent. So this is an idea I've had for a very long time, like a few years now. And others have, of course, had very similar ideas. Because, you know, Sea Serpent, it's not that hard. Though I think my ideas for its implementation are enough to make this unique. So let's start with the basics right. How would you encounter the Sea Serpent? I imagine it would be a random spawn, but not in the same way that other emergent threats randomly spawn on the ship. It would appear randomly on the map and begin stalking the map without the player's knowledge. There's no horn to announce its presence, there's no mark on the map, it's simply there, or it isn't. From here, it swims along its path around the map looking for player ships to attack. When encountering a player, it will relentlessly chase a player ship to force a battle. From here, the player would have a choice. Fight off the beast and risk sinking, or if they have enough loot on their boat, they could choose to toss loot overboard as an offer of tribute to the intelligent yet greedy beast. Let's say for hypothetical sake, because That took a second to settle in. Let's say for hypothetical sake, because this could require further balancing, that you need 10K's worth of loot to offer, right? If you can't reach that limit, you're forced to fight or sail with the beast hunting you until you can persuade it to leave by gathering enough loot as you sail along with it attacking you. From here, it will either leave with its tribute swallowed whole, or fight if you didn't offer it enough gold tribute. If it wins and sinks the player, it will swallow any loot from the boat and continue onward to find a new boat, and it will continue hunting players on the server until slain. When fighting the sea serpent, it's designed to be a tough PvE counter, more tanky than a Mega Kraken, able to initiate more simple attacks such as ramming or biting the ship, or more complex ones like coiling its body around larger ships similar to a Kraken's tentacle. The sea serpent would also be able to spew boiling hot water onto the ship, scalding all caught in the blast on top deck. Thus has the double threat of filling the hole with hot water to burn those who hide below. So they would need to bucket quickly to keep their ship from filling up. The crimson scaled monster would make a deadly foe as it knocks your ship around like a loot pinata. Now, what kind of loot do you receive upon felling the beast? Well, nothing directly save for sea serpent to hand you to the hunter's call, and a special loot item. What this loot item isn't necessarily set in stone, but for the sake of hypothetical, let's say you take the serpent's eye. This then gives you the option to take the eye to the hunter's call to receive a sort of, well, let's just say a voyage for simplicity's sake, where your hunter's call vendor, let's say you take it to, I don't know, Spoils of Plenty or whatever. I forget what the hunter's call representative is. Hendrick, I know that's one of them. Hendrick takes the eye, right, and will craft the eye into a sort of compass, quote-unquote, item that can lead you back to the serpent's lair. Kind of like they do a magic, ritual to craft the eye into a compass-like item that leads the sea serpent, quote-unquote, back home, so you can follow the compass there. Not like an actual physical compass. What I'm imagining is more akin to, and Sam won't know this because he hasn't played the Tall Tales, but Wolf will. There is a scene in the third Monkey Island Tall Tale where you get an item that's kind of like a shrunken head, and it turns to lead you in the direction you're supposed to go through the system. I'm thinking mechanically it works the same way your Gold Hoarder vault compasses would that lead you to map pieces, where it turns and you kind of have to follow the direction it turns. Imagine what I'm picturing in my head is an eye that's suspended from it's tied up in ropes that you're holding, and it hangs there and turns and looks in the direction to where its lair would be. If that makes any sense. Now the eye would take you to one of a few randomized locations, Devil's Roar, the serpent's home. From here, you would dive into the water like a siren shrine to reach its lair, a deep undersea cave system in the hot waters of the Roar. Venture inside to find the beast's chambers, and not only will you find a predetermined amount of treasure, let's say a skull fort's worth for conversation's sake. It could be more or less depending on how much is considered balanced for how tough of a fight it would be. But also, in addition to that, all of the loot it may have obtained from other ships before its death as it brought said loot back to its lair, kind of like a dragon's hoard. Lastly, a cluster of sea serpent eggs in its nest that can be sold to the hunter's call, maybe to the merchants, maybe to the reapers, or cooked and used as food that full heals and overheat. Small idea if it's necessary, if transporting loot to the surface is deemed a pain. Instead of a mermaid statue like the Siren Shrine, because, I'm thinking this cave system is a more natural formation, or maybe it's something that's been altered by the sea serpent itself as it made itself a home underwater. it wouldn't make sense to have like mermaid architecture in there, like merm statues the Siren Shrines have. Make it more thematically appropriate. Instead, maybe the sea serpent has captured a live mermaid and kept it in its lair, which you can free. Grateful, they carry you and your loot to the surface. As previously established above, the sea serpent is somewhat intelligent. Beyond enjoying collecting shiny objects, it could view the mermaid as stored food, or maybe understands having it will bring more of its kind, either more food. Or perhaps mermaids offer a tribute and treasure to buy their captured friend's freedom. Like, the sea serpent would not necessarily be of human intelligence from a story perspective, but there are plenty of examples in real life, for example, of animals doing intelligent things. Like, one story that comes to mind is, I remember a story about a dolphin at an aquarium that was trained to collect trash up from the bottom of its tank, and it would get a fish as a treat whenever it did that. But it got smart, and it would tear the trash in half and hide the rest under a rock so you could get more fish out of the same amount of trash. It's kind of like that. Like, the sea serpent doesn't necessarily recognize kidnapping a person, but it recognizes, oh, hey, the other tiny fish people bring me more of what I like having if I give them back the other fish person. Kind of like an intelligent animal sort of thing, like how a raven might put rocks into a bucket to raise its water level, or some other example of how animals have shown intelligence. And that's the general overall idea.
I like that one better than the Storm King because it's.
I think that one's a bit more grounded.
But also, yeah, I like the idea of it being a hidden hunter that you can pay tribute to if you have enough. Yeah, that's cool.
I definitely like both ideas. I think both of those could be implemented pretty easily, both lore-wise and gameplay-wise.
Even though it's a sea serpent, it kind of takes like inspiration from the classical fantasy. Like it hoards treasure, it kidnaps stuff, etc., etc.